In the depths of the Great Depression, as unemployment soared and economic despair gripped the United States, policymakers faced mounting pressure to shield American industries and farmers from the relentless tide of global competition. It was in this climate of uncertainty and hardship that the Smoot-Hawley Tariff Act of 1930 emerged, a legislative effort aimed at fortifying the nation's economic defenses. The act sharply increased tariffs on more than 20,000 imported goods, with the intention of protecting domestic producers and stabilizing the economy. Yet, the consequences of this decision would reverberate far beyond America's borders, shaping the course of international trade and the trajectory of the global economy for years to come. The Smoot-Hawley Tariff Act raised the average tariff rate on dutiable imports from an already high 40% to nearly 60% by 1932, a result amplified by the deflationary pressures of the era. This dramatic escalation in trade barriers was intended to encourage Americans to buy domestically produced goods, thereby supporting local businesses and preserving jobs. However, the reality proved far more complex and ultimately far more damaging. One of the most profound effects of the Smoot-Hawley tariffs was a precipitous decline in international trade. Between 1929 and 1933, U.S. imports plummeted by 66%, while exports fell by 61%. The contraction was not limited to the United States. World trade as a whole shrank by approximately 65% between 1929 and 1934. This global collapse in trade had devastating consequences, not only for American businesses and workers, but also for economies around the world that depended on the flow of goods across borders. The United States trading partners, unwilling to accept the new barriers without response, retaliated with tariffs of their own. Countries such as Canada, Australia, and various European nations imposed their own duties on American goods. These retaliatory measures further constricted the market for U.S. exports, with exports to these nations dropping by an estimated 28 to 32%. The cycle of protectionism and retaliation created a downward spiral, in which each new barrier to trade prompted another, further reducing the opportunities for mutual economic growth. Certain sectors of the U.S. economy were especially hard hit. American agriculture, which had already been struggling with falling prices and overproduction, faced new obstacles as foreign markets closed their doors to U.S. farm products. By 1933, farm exports had decreased by one-third from their 1929 levels, compounding the hardships faced by rural communities. Manufacturing industries, too, suffered as European countries raised tariffs on American-made cars and other products, effectively shutting off access to vital overseas markets. While the Smoot-Hawley Act was not the root cause of the Great Depression, most economists agree that it exacerbated the crisis and prolonged the nation's economic agony. By choking off international trade, the tariffs limited the ability of American businesses to sell their goods abroad, reducing revenues and deepening the economic downturn. The reduction in trade also contributed to a wave of bank failures, particularly in agricultural regions, where farmers could no longer earn enough to repay their loans. As foreign capital fled the U.S. stock market, financial instability mounted, further undermining confidence in the economy. For American consumers, the tariffs brought higher prices at a time when many could least afford it. Imported goods, now subject to steep duties, became prohibitively expensive, narrowing choices and straining household budgets. The intended effect, boosting domestic consumption, was undermined by widespread unemployment and declining incomes, leaving many Americans unable to purchase even American-made goods. The legacy of the Smoot-Hawley Tariff Act offers important lessons for contemporary debates about trade policy. While the specifics of the global economy have changed dramatically since the 1930s, the fundamental risks associated with protectionist measures remain strikingly similar. In recent years, discussions about tariffs and trade barriers have resurfaced, prompting comparisons with the Smoot-Hawley era. Today, the average tariff rates proposed or implemented are generally lower than those imposed during the early 1930s. While Smoot-Hawley pushed average tariffs on dutiable imports to nearly 60%, most current proposals would raise the U.S. average effective tariff rate to around 22%, still significant, but notably less severe. However, some targeted tariffs, particularly those aimed at specific countries such as China, have approached levels reminiscent of the Smoot-Hawley peak. The scope of tariff actions has also evolved. Whereas Smoot-Hawley applied broadly to more than 20,000 agricultural and industrial products, many current tariffs are more narrowly focused, targeting specific sectors such as steel, aluminum, or particular categories of goods from certain countries. Nonetheless, recent proposals have called for broader, across-the-board tariffs, raising concerns about a return to more sweeping forms of protectionism. One of the most significant differences between the world of the 1930s and today is the degree of global interconnectedness. Modern supply chains span continents, with components and raw materials crossing multiple borders before final assembly. This intricate web of economic relationships means that tariffs can have far-reaching and sometimes unpredictable effects, disrupting production and raising costs for businesses that rely on international inputs. Retaliation remains a persistent risk. Just as in the 1930s, countries affected by U.S. tariffs have responded with their own duties on American products, harming exporters and escalating trade tensions. The cycle of tit-for-tat measures can quickly spiral, undermining the stability of the global trading system and threatening economic growth. The economic context in which tariffs are imposed also matters. The Smoot-Hawley tariffs were enacted amid the onset of the Great Depression, a time of widespread economic distress. While the current environment is different, concerns about economic slowdowns, trade imbalances, and the need to protect key industries continue to shape policy decisions. The goals of trade policy have also shifted. While Smoot-Hawley was primarily motivated by a desire to protect domestic industries from foreign competition, contemporary tariffs are sometimes deployed as tools for strategic objectives, addressing trade imbalances, responding to unfair trade practices, or safeguarding national security. Nonetheless, the underlying impulse to shield domestic producers from external pressures remains a common thread. The experience of the Smoot-Hawley Tariff Act serves as a cautionary tale about the unintended consequences of protectionism. While the desire to support American workers and industries is understandable, history demonstrates that raising barriers to trade can backfire, leading to retaliation, reduced exports, higher prices, and slower economic growth. In a world where economies are more interconnected than ever, the risks of disruption are magnified. As policymakers grapple with the challenges of a rapidly changing global economy, the lessons of the past are more relevant than ever. The Smoot-Hawley experience underscores the importance of cooperation, openness, and the careful calibration of trade policy. It reminds us that actions taken in the name of protection can sometimes inflict the greatest harm on those they are meant to help. In conclusion, while the specific circumstances and details of current tariff debates may differ from those of the 1930s, the fundamental economic risks associated with widespread protectionism remain. The legacy of the Smoot-Hawley Tariff Act is a powerful reminder that policies designed to insulate a nation from the world can, paradoxically, deepen its vulnerabilities. By learning from history, we can strive to build a more resilient, prosperous, and interconnected global economy, one that benefits all participants and avoids the pitfalls of the past.